Chapter 1141, Found It. There were no ordinary civilians left in Luo City. When the space pathway opened up, the civilians had been evacuated. Luo City was now a massive fortress. It had only one function. It would be used in the battle with the Luniverse. But even if the owner of the house had left, according to their records, as long as they knew who had lived here, and obtained accurate information about them, they would be able to use information networks all around the country to find them. It was not guaranteed that they would be able to find her, but there was a high possibility. Chen Zuan called Zhong Yutong. Lu Shu walked up to the house. The door was tightly locked, but even then, it was as weak as paper to a rank 6 practitioner, let alone for Lu Shu. Lu Shu broke the lock with one hand and walked in. The inside of the house was very messy. The washing machine, television, and refrigerator were from a brand that had been famous for over 10 years. The white furniture had turned yellow. Some were even turning black. Female clothes were strewn on the floor. The 2 pots of flowers by the window had wilted. There was a bowl on the sofa. The food inside the bowl had turned bad. There was a decaying atmosphere inside the house. It was as if the owner of the house was desolate as well. There was an ashtray on top of a table with some cigarette butts inside. There were no men's items inside the house. Thus, a female smoker lived here. Her clothes were big as well. This aligned with Li Dian's description of the owner. Perhaps the lady had lived here for over 10 years. No new owner had taken over the place. Li Dian pointed below the window. Back then, there was a crib there. A carpenter had constructed it himself. The sickly baby sat there. He did not cry or make a fuss. Lu Shu did not interrupt him. He quietly listened. He knew that this was his past. Li Dian continued. Back then, I thought that the baby was rather cute. When he grew up, he would definitely be able to achieve grand things, like becoming a heavenly king. Lu Shu looked at Li Dian. Have you guessed it? Li Dian laughed mockingly. I am not dumb. Of course Li Dian had guessed this. If not, why would Lu Shu be so concerned about a lady? This was the 9th heavenly king. He was one of the strongest and most mysterious experts in the world. His fame overseas was almost on par with that of Nie Ting's. Why would this kind of person focus on an ordinary lady for no reason? Thus, Li Dian obtained some shocking information. Over 10 years ago, he had stolen the toy gourd and swaddling cloth of a heavenly king. Li Dian wanted to slap himself. Out of all the people he could have stolen from, why him? Who knew that stealing from a lady would put him in so much trouble? But Heavenly King Li Dian explained, I was not trying to curry favor. You also know that the gourd and the swaddling cloth are not normal. After I realized that they were not ordinary items, I secretly felt that your history might be very shocking. The swaddling cloth is able to block sensations. This alone will fetch a high price in the black market. As for the gourd, it is amazing. Suddenly, Cheng Qiuqiao said from the bedroom, Brother Shu, come and take a look. Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu walked into the bedroom. They discovered a small crib with clothes inside. The owner of this house had used the crib as a clothes rack. Li Dian excitedly said, there's no doubt. This was the crib. Then, Lu Xiaoyu raised the crib, causing all the clothes inside the crib to fall out. Then, she kept the crib inside her space ring. Lu Shu asked, why did you take the crib? Why not? It's a souvenir, said Lu Xiaoyu innocently. At that moment, Chen Zuan walked in with his phone in his hand. We've obtained the information. The owner of the house was Xiang Xiuxi. This house was given out by a factory over 20 years ago. She has always been the owner of the house. There were 3 previous offenses. All of them involved fights with her neighbors. Now, she has evacuated to Mang City with the rest of the Luo City residents. It's 30 minutes away by car. Okay. Lu Shu nodded his head. Let's go and find her. Li Dian finally heaved a sigh of relief. He asked, I didn't trick you, right? I told the truth. Yes. You are rather honest, said Lu Shu as he nodded his head. Then will my sentence be shortened? Li Dian was slightly excited. Relax. I will not go back on my promises. Lu Shu patted Li Dian's shoulder. After they boarded the car, Li Dian suddenly asked, Heavenly King Lu, what if I could not find her? What would you do? What else can I do? I would make you regret it, said Lu Shu casually. Li Dian laughed. So you were scaring me back there? I didn't, said Lu Shu. I would make you regret it in hell. From Li Dian's distress, plus 666. When the battle broke out, the residents of Luo City were evacuated. But there were many residents in a city. They could only disperse the residents into various cities. Some were very far apart. Some sought refuge with their relatives. Rich people would be able to buy new houses in other cities. However, since most people did not have relatives they could go to, or money to buy a house, they could only wait for subsidies and aid. But houses could not be built so quickly. Mang City was now filled with temporary housing and tents, but it was not as dirty and messy as Lu Shu had expected. On the contrary, it was neat and organized. Each temporary house had a number. The information of its residents were written clearly. The managers of this area were very cooperative. After all, the Heavenly Network wanted to look for someone. They would definitely work together with them. Lu Shu slowly walked in. He realized that the spirit of the residents in the temporary houses was quite good. Suddenly, the chief of this temporary house shouted, Xiang Xiuxi, someone is here to look for you. Lu Shu did not expect him to shout. He almost jumped in shock. The next moment, someone else shouted from inside the house. Why are you shouting? Who is looking for me? Lu Shu saw a burly woman walk out of the temporary house. He finally understood why Li Dian could not feel her bones. No one else would be able to do so. Are you Xiang Xiuxi? Lu Shu went straight to the point. Yes, I am Xiang Xiuxi. What are you here for? Xiang Xiuxi observed Lu Shu. I have never seen you before. She was not foolish. She looked over and saw a group of people behind Lu Shu. Their presence was not normal. They had come with a motive. The aura of a practitioner would grow stronger. This was not very useful in terms of cultivation, but once they grew stronger, they would have more confidence. This change in aura exuded outwards. Lu Shu asked, Did you raise a child 18 years ago? Xiang Xiuxi was dumbfounded. How did you know? Are you? Where did you obtain the child? Lu Shu asked. I picked him up. Xiang Xiuxi's tone grew weaker. Where did you pick him up from? 18 years ago, someone was chasing and killing a lady in the middle of the night. Back then, I was going home from my night shift in the factory. The woman ran past me, but I did not think much of it. Xiang Xiuxi said, but not long after, I found a box in front of my door. There was a baby inside the box. Chapter 1142, The Puzzle of Truth. When Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao heard what Xiang Xiuxi had said, they looked at each other helplessly. If that baby was Brother Shu, his life had been very rough. He had been abandoned as his mother had been chased and killed. This was hard to understand. They had thought that Lu Shu was here to uncover his own history. But from the look of things, it was not at all simple. Lu Shu thought about it and asked, were the gourd and the swaddling cloth originally in the box as well? Yes, said Xiang Xiuxi. There was also a piece of paper with a Lu Shu written on it. That was the baby's name. Other than that, there was nothing else. The gourd was rather exquisite, but it was a pity that there was a crack. It was as if someone had damaged it. There was a black pendant around the baby's neck, but strangely, it could not be removed. I don't know what material the string was made out of, but it could not be cut through. I don't know which idiot stole the gourd and swaddling cloth in the middle of the night. As Xiang Shoshi spoke, she grew more angry. Those belonged to the baby. Who stole things from the baby? They are not human. The more Li Dian listened to this, the more awkward he became. His face was burning red. Lu Shu silently pondered. The information that Xiang Shoshi had provided corroborated with that of Li Dian's. The gourd had been cracked before, but healed by itself after the dawn of the magically rich era. He thought about it. The crack in the gourd was probably because of a battle. The black pendant around his neck was more important. Others could not steal it even if they wanted to. To Li Dian, who stole even the swaddling cloth of a baby, Lu Shu believed that he would have tried to take the pendant, but he had not. Suddenly, Lu Shu thought about a related question. What about the box? If even the swaddling cloth was a treasure, would the box that contained a baby be a treasure as well? I sold it, said Xiang Shoshi. A wandering antique collector saw it. It fetched a decent price. A few $100s. Lu Shu calmly looked at Xiang Shoshi. She had sold it for a few $100s? No, a few $100s in the 90s was not bad. Who had taken the box? It would be very difficult to find this person, but Lu Shu had no regrets. He only wanted to know the truth. Until when did you take care of the baby? Lu Shu asked, did you continue to take care of the child, or? At first, I had wanted to take care of him until he became an adult. But he was very sickly. I didn't think that I would be able to support him. Xiang Shoshi said, back then, I was a virgin. Suddenly taking in a child would not be appropriate. What if I cannot marry? Furthermore, with my salary, it was barely enough to take care of myself. Lu Shu looked at Xiang Shoshi's physique. She was living a rather good life. Lu Shu curiously asked, how long did you take care of the child until you gave him away? Where did you send him to? I didn't take note of the exact time. The baby was far too weak. One night, I was carrying him while watching television when he suddenly stopped breathing. He had no heartbeat either. Xiang Shoshi said, I panicked. But before I could think of what to do, he was fine again. I thought that this could not go on. I did not have the money to treat him. It would be best to give him away. I didn't give him to anyone. I left him at the door of an orphanage. Lu Shu nodded his head. So that was what had happened. After taking care of him for a few months, she had sent him to the orphanage for various reasons. Everything had made sense up till this point. The puzzle in Lu Shu's heart became more complete. Thank you, said Lu Shu earnestly. Xiang Shoshi smiled and waved her hand. You only asked a few questions. There's nothing to thank me for. I still have to be grateful. Lu Shu smiled. Then, he turned and left. Lu Xiaoyu thought about it. Then, she took out piles of cash and 4 gold bars from her space ring. She placed them in front of Xiang Shoshi. Thank you. There were people observing this in the temporary houses. When they saw this, they exploded. When they came to take a look, they had thought that there were grand motives behind this. But they did not think much of this. They had just come to observe. When thousands of cash and gold bars appeared, everyone was shocked. The rich had found their own escape path. Those in the temporary houses were ordinary families. Thus, when they saw this, they could not help but be shocked. Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao glared at the people around them. They took out their credentials. We are from the Heavenly Network. Do not think about taking this money. If not, you know what the consequences are. Xiang Shoshi was dumbfounded. Suddenly, she realized something. Was that young man the baby I took care of back then? Only this explanation made sense. If not, why would she be presented with so much money for answering a few questions? Chen Xuan laughed cheerily. He is the 9th heavenly king of the heavenly network. How good would it have been if you had not sent him away? Lu Xiaoyu glanced at Chen Xuan. What nonsense are you spouting? Even if she had only taken care of him for a few months, it is worthy of gratitude. Furthermore, if Xiang Shoshi had not sent Lu Shu to the orphanage, Lu Xiaoyu would not have met Lu Shu. Lu Xiaoyu gave Xiang Shoshi $500,000. $250,000 was gratitude for taking care of Lu Xiaoyu, while the other $250,000 and the gold bars were for sending Lu Shu to the orphanage. When the onlookers heard what Chen Xuan had said, they were dumbfounded. The experts in the realm of cultivation were like celebrities. The 9th heavenly king, Lu Shu, was extremely famous. The elimination of the collection of gods, the marriage in Europe, and the dragon at the tiger's back fortress had spread very quickly. Everyone looked at Xiang Shoshi. So the 9th heavenly king was an orphan who had been taken care of by this lady. Wait. If that young man was Lu Shu, the 9th heavenly king, then the young girl who had been willing to present so much money and gold as thanks was probably Lu Xiaoyu, the fabled 11th heavenly king. Even the members of the heavenly network had not realized that the civilians were more interested in them than celebrities. Xiang Shoshi stood there blankly. Suddenly, she started to wipe her tears. Please don't blame me. If I could support myself, I would not have sent him away. This world is very cruel. It is good enough that I can live. I don't want the money. Please take it. Lu Xiaoyu sighed and said, no one will blame you. This is our gratitude. Without you, he might have died on the first day. You are a kind person. With that, Lu Xiaoyu, Chen Xuan, and the rest walked away. Yes, the world was very cruel. It was because of this cruelty that Lu Xiaoyu admired the courage Xiang Shoshi possessed to take care of Lu Shu. Chapter 1143. Fortunately, it was Lu Shu. The fact that Lu Shu had gone to Meng City to find Xiang Shoshi could not be hidden from Nieting and Shishuajin. Furthermore, Lu Shu had no intention of hiding it from anyone. Nieting and Shishuajin sat in a courtyard within the Longmen fortress. In front of them was a stone table that was exactly the same as the one in Luhai Lane. There were rolled-up pastries and congee on the table. There was a green onion in Shishuajin's hand as well. What is he looking for? His own history? Shishuajin looked at some documents and said, he requested to shorten the sentence. He took away the strange cloth too. I am looking at the resources now. Xiang Shoshi has never had a boyfriend. She definitely has nothing to do with Lu Shu. But someone said that over 10 years ago, she took care of a child. However, she sent him away not long after. Is there any other information? Nieting thought about it and said, he will not go and find her for no reason. Xiang Shoshi said that she picked up a child. She had wanted to take care of the child, but realized that she could not do so. Thus, she sent him to the orphanage. The gourd and the cloth all belong to the child, said Shishuajin. He saw that Nieting's expression was rather strange. What's wrong? Do you remember when I told you about Cloudy and Tiger Ji? On a stormy night 18 years ago, they were carrying a massive box. Someone heard the sound of a child crying, but no one saw what was inside the box. Shishuajin was dumbfounded. Are you saying that? Back then, when we were discussing this, we believed that there was a child inside the box. Nieting analyzed the information. I asked someone to check on when Lu Shu had been sent to the orphanage. We realized that there was a gap of a few months between these two events. Before this, even the Golden Foundation could not confirm what was inside the box, as no one had seen what the box contained. Furthermore, the box had mysteriously disappeared. Furthermore, only one person had heard the sound of a baby crying. No one else had heard it. Either that, or they had not noticed it in battle. But Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin felt that, taking into consideration the behavior of Cloudy and Tiger Ji, it would not make sense if a baby was not inside. Now, they recalled what had happened that night. Sensory types did not appear only after the dawn of the magically rich era. The Golden Foundation already had such experts. But why did they not sense what was inside the box? The swaddling cloth of the baby was the most rational explanation. Li Dian was able to move around freely in the Salt Lake relic with that cloth. The magical trees did not attack him. Back then, when Lu Shu dealt with Li Dian in the black market, the cloth was the reason why even Lu Shu could not tell what weapons he had. Nie Ting picked up the records and confessions by Li Dian. According to Li Dian, as long as he wore the cloth in the relics, the magical trees would not discover him. It was as if he had blocked all sensations. The only one who had attacked him in the Salt Lake relic was the old tree spirit. Thus, the swaddling cloth was the root of the problem. Back then, Lu Shu was in the box. Nie Ting exclaimed with confidence. He suddenly relaxed. So that was what had happened. No wonder Cloudy visited Luo City so many times over the past decade. No wonder Cloudy deliberately wanted to get closer to Lu Shu. No wonder the person who had attacked the sword formation wanted to lay a trap for Lu Shu during the battle at Tiger's Back. Lu Shu's puzzle of truth was not complete, as the answer he was looking for was not so simple. But to Nie Ting, the truth of the matter that had troubled them for many years was finally out. Thus, the Luniverse King of Gods and the Golden Foundation's Demon King, who ruthlessly killed people, was Lu Shu. Nie Ting could not quite accept this conclusion. But for some reason, when Shi Xuejin saw Nie Ting's expression, he was happy. Do you feel that it's hard to accept? I think that it is quite good. But all these are not important. I really want to know how Li Xianyi will react to this. For some reason, I feel like laughing. Yes, Li Xianyi was the one who had led people to chase and kill Lu Shu. Now, not only did his target live beside him, he had also learned everything from the Hall of Swords. Lu Shu had advanced to the Master Realm. How many people would be able to kill him now? But back then, some puppet masters had died because of the Golden Foundation. What should they do? Shi Xuejin was suddenly worried for the Golden Foundation. That night, some puppet masters had died in the battle, including the woman who had placed the baby at Xiang Xiuxi's door. Nie Ting and the rest did not quite understand the puppet masters. They did not even know the name of the puppet master who had died. This was the extent of the hate between the puppet masters and the Golden Foundation. Although Nie Ting knew that a third party was behind this, and even Cloudy and Tiger Ji had given up killing the Golden Foundation, what would Lu Shu think? Lu Shu probably did not know what had happened in the past. But no matter what, the person who was most involved was not Nie Ting. Shi Xuejin thought about it and said, "Don't you think that this is quite good?" Nie Ting furrowed his eyebrows. How so? We have always been worried about the King of Gods in the Luniverse. We have also been worried that the puppet masters will cause trouble among the humans. But if the King of Gods is Lu Shu, our worries seem to have been uncalled for, said Shi Xuejin calmly. Nie Ting understood what Shi Xuejin meant. They were familiar with Lu Shu. Although he was despicable and harsh, he was quite different from the ruthless Demon King they had imagined. At least, they did not have to worry that he had dreams of destroying the Earth. Thus, in the series where the Demon King destroyed Earth, once Lu Shu became the protagonist, the series started to develop in a different direction. There was no way to determine whether it would be a comedy or a spoof, but at least it would not be a thriller. This judgment was based on their understanding of Lu Shu. They knew what kind of person Lu Shu was. Actually, the puppet masters have never thought about destroying the world, right? Shi Xuejin said, look at Cloudy. All she does is bring Tiger Ji to eat hot pot. It is hard for me to believe that she has plans to destroy the earth. But why would the King of Gods suddenly come to Earth? Had something happened in the Luniverse 18 years ago? According to the information from Li Xianyi, he said that every puppet master has a special ability. For example, the one who had attacked the sword formation had the ability to create dreams. Nie Ting said, then what ability did the person who was killed in Luo City have? Contact the Golden Foundation. Ask them where she was buried. Shi Xuejin said, and find records of that battle. Lu Shu must have guessed something as well. Nie Ting said, although his identity is still hard for me to accept, for some reason, I suddenly feel that fortunately, he is the Demon King. From the looks of things, your decision to make him a heavenly king was the most successful investment in the history of humankind, said Shi Xuejin with a sigh. The King of Gods of the Luniverse was the 9th heavenly king of the heavenly network. Shi Xuejin suddenly felt more confident. Chapter 1144, Lu Xiaoyu's natural talent in swordplay. Lu Shu was silent on the way back. The rest did not say much. Chen Zuan and the rest did not know about the past affairs involving the puppet masters. Thus, they simply thought that the threat to finding Lu Shu's parents had been severed. Even Lu Shu did not know that the lady, who had been chased and killed on the street, was Tricker, a puppet master. When Li Xianyi found out about this, he had been fighting with Dream Chooser. Then, Lu Shu had gone to the Luniverse. But Lu Shu was very clear about his own history. He also realized why Cloudy had come to Luo City for no reason. Perhaps she had known about his identity then. As for how she knew, Lu Shu felt that it was not surprising. The techniques of the celestial map were very unique. Lu Xiaoyu's techniques were also unique. There was no one in the world who had the same abilities as them. Suddenly, Chang Qiuqiao said, why don't we find clues about that woman? How? Chen Zuan asked curiously. Lu Shu spoke. Find Zhong Yutong. He should be able to obtain information. It was not that Zhong Yutong knew where Tricker had gone. The Heavenly Network had definitely exchanged information with the Golden Foundation. It was no secret that Tricker was dead. The Golden Foundation would definitely not keep this from the Heavenly Network. Li Dian, who was sitting between Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao, carefully asked, Heavenly King Lu, can my sentence be shortened? Of course. Lu Shu nodded and said, according to our agreement, 40% of your sentence will be lifted. You will spend some time in prison before being moved to the Longmen Fortress to work. You will complete the rest of your sentence with limited freedom. Li Dian heaved a sigh of relief. Limited freedom was not bad. Lu Shu said, Li Dian, we are old acquaintances. I hope you will understand that there is nothing in this world that can be done without a price. Turn over a new leaf. You can do many things in this era. Why do you have to cheat others? Li Dian sighed. I was forced. Stop. Lu Shu expressionlessly interrupted Li Dian. I want to say that your tragic encounters have only allowed us to understand the motivations behind your crimes, but you have not earned our sympathy. If you want us to think highly of you, lead a decent life first. A large majority of offenders in this world had experiences that were worth the sympathy of others. But did this mean that they could commit crimes? The world did not work this way. Civilization and humankind had advanced to its present state. One would only be able to respect civilization by respecting the law. After they returned to the Longmen Fortress, someone came to take in Li Dian. When the handcuffs were put on Li Dian, he suddenly felt that this world was very strange. He had stolen the blanket and toy of a master 18 years ago. To Li Dian, the gourd was probably Lu Shu's toy. This world was very frightening. Li Dian believed in fortunes. If not, how could he conduct fortune-telling sessions for others? He was not simply a swindler. This skill had been passed down in his family. Li Dian felt that he would cheat people less in the future. He might cheat someone who would become powerful in the future. His luck was not very good. When they returned to the Longmen Fortress, Lu Shu was walking to Zhong Yutong's office when he bumped into Li Yixiao and Nailin Quebec. They were chatting along the corridor. Nailin K was upset. "When are we getting married?" Li Yixiao was slightly nervous. "Will we be able to be happy once we are married? My friend has married 2 times. There's no need to." Nailin K said, "If the marriage doesn't turn out well, will others marry again?" Lu Shu did not expect to see Nailin K forcing marriage on Li Yixiao. Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao almost burst out laughing. The entire Heavenly Network knew that Li Yixiao was controlled by Nailin Quebec. His daily pocket money was only $20 at most. No one quite wanted to marry her. When Li Yixiao saw Lu Shu, it was as if he had seen his saving grace. He ran over to Lu Shu. "Lu Shu, I have something to discuss with you." Then, Li Yixiao pulled Lu Shu along and ran. As they ran, he softly said, "She is getting crazier recently. Brother, show me the way. Can you bring me along the next time you go to the Luniverse?" Lu Shu laughed. "You have escaped marriage before. Do you think that Nailin K will let you go? If I don't run, I will not be able to bear it." Li Yixiao was about to cry. He recalled how he had been a formidable man who traveled around the country. Now, the only hot pot he was able to eat was a $19 self-service hot pot. It was tragic. "Don't." Lu Shu pushed away Li Yixiao's hand. "I can't help you with this." Lu Shu said, "Goodbye," to Chen Zuan and the rest. Then, he brought Lu Xiaoyu to the wall of the Longmen Fortress. They sat on the edge and looked into the distance. Their field of vision was vast. "Xiaoyu," said Lu Shu softly. Lu Xiaoyu tilted her head and looked at Lu Shu. "Why don't you want to learn swordplay?" This was the first time Lu Shu had asked Lu Xiaoyu this question. In the past, Li Xianyi had wanted to take Lu Xiaoyu as his disciple, but had constantly been rejected by Lu Xiaoyu. At first, it was because Lu Xiaoyu did not trust Li Xianyi. She did not want to interact with Li Xianyi. But they were on good terms now. Li Xianyi treated Lu Xiaoyu like his own granddaughter and spoiled her. But back then, Li Xianyi asked Lu Xiaoyu to inherit his swordplay skills, but was rejected by Lu Xiaoyu once again. Lu Shu had never asked this question, but for some reason, he suddenly felt like asking her. Lu Xiaoyu thought about it and said, "Probably because it's not fun." "Not fun?" Lu Shu asked curiously. "Yes. It's not as relaxing as controlling a few spirits," said Lu Xiaoyu with a smile. "Are there any other reasons?" Lu Shu asked. Lu Xiaoyu was silent for very long. Then, she suddenly said, subconsciously, "I think that it's boring." Only the two of them would be able to understand this reason. As the puzzle of truth was slowly being completed, everyone gradually understood that their history was not as simple as they had thought. Lu Xiaoyu smiled and said, "At first, when I saw all of you train swordplay, I felt disappointed. I could remember everything the old man taught after seeing it only once, but did not train. It was as if I had already reached the peak and looked down on basics like this." As Lu Xiaoyu spoke, she snapped her fingers. Transparent sword energy shot out from the tip of her finger, distorting the space around it. Then, Lu Xiaoyu produced more sword energy, breaking the previous sword energy. Before this, Lu Xiaoyu had never trained in swordplay. She had never even held a sword. Lu Shu smiled. "You never said that you could produce sword energy at will." Lu Xiaoyu stretched. "All I have to do is create swords for you. It is more relaxing. You will protect me too." Chapter 1145, Stepping into the Night Sky. Lu Xiaoyu's gift in swordplay was probably the best amongst everyone Lu Shu had met before. She had never touched a sword or practiced it before, but she could attack with sword energy. If Li Xianyi heard about her skills, he would probably start questioning about his life. Yet, Lu Xiaoyu refused to learn his sword skills. That was rather bizarre. Most people on Earth understood the idea that one had to make use of one's gifts in order to survive. However, Lu Xiaoyu gave up everything and stood behind Lu Shu. It was as though she willingly gave all the recognition to Lu Shu, in order for him to become the star of the show. "Do you like this unpredictable and chaotic world?" asked Lu Shu. "No," Lu Xiaoyu shook her head. "Neither do I," sighed Lu Shu. "However, what if one day we realized that the world became like this because of us?" Lu Xiaoyu shook her head again. "I don't think so." "Is it because we killed the innocent?" "No." "Did the world become chaotic because of our ambitions?" "No. We can't take the blame." "However, everything happened because of us," said Lu Shu. "Then, we shall end this," said Lu Xiaoyu. Lu Shu smiled. "That's what I feel too." Lu Shu. Lu Xiaoyu suddenly became serious. "Yes?" Lu Shu turned over. "Have you ever thought about why you always fell sick when you were young?" asked Lu Xiaoyu. "Now that I think of it, perhaps it was because I suffered from some injuries," sighed Lu Shu. He had always thought that his poor health was because he was born frail and weak and had even secretly bought the 6-flavor ramani to consume. However, now, he realized that it was not as simple as he once thought it was. Perhaps, he had once experienced a near-death encounter. "No matter who did it," Lu Xiaoyu said calmly, "they have to pay the price." At night, Chen Zuan and Cheng Qiuqiao went over to Lu Shu's place to have dinner. They brought a new update with them. A remains in North America is about to be opened. Lu Shu was stunned for a moment. It had been a long time since remains were opened. He even thought that no more sites would ever open again. That was because he realized that even the Luniverse was lagging behind in terms of weaponry. Yet, the relics on Earth were like a mine. At this moment, Lu Shu realized that the site's appearance was not coincidental but rather purposefully planned by someone. Tiger Ji conquered the blood devil in the Kochang remains. Cloudy looked for the small white fish in the Lopner remains. However, Chaos ate the small white fish before she could find it. From Lu Shu's point of view, the creatures in the remains were probably the guardians of the remains. Cloudy and Tiger Ji were very certain about that. When he recalled that, Lu Shu knew that the guardians were not innocent individuals. The blood devil had once revolted and the rules of the remains were determined. The creatures in the remains were unable to unlock the remains by obtaining the relics themselves. The rule was probably set to prevent the guards from stealing the relics. The blood devil could be said to have been sealed in the site. Therefore, although some people might not know, Lu Shu was aware that a number of sites were fixed and would not continue opening forever. It had been about 1 year since a new remains appeared. "Why did a site suddenly open?" asked Lu Shu. "I'm not sure, but the intelligence report came from our people and is definitely accurate. Zhong Yutong has already confirmed it several times," Chen Zuan said as he ate. "He wants us to head over to Snatch, to take some treasures back." He said it too nicely. After all, the Heavenly Network had 3 masters, and nobody would hand over the sites to others. Moreover, after Lu Shu knew about the secret of the remains, he would definitely not hand it over to anyone else. Everything from the remains were precious gems if Lu Shu took them back to the Luniverse. So how Lu Shu would possibly give it to others? However, he did not think of snatching anything now, but rather if he could close the door of the site with Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin. Of course, based on Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin's character, they would definitely think about the organization's reputation. However, all of them probably decided on the same thing in private. Lu Shu called Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin. However, since both of them were eating in the Longmen Fortress, they asked Lu Shu to come over to discuss the matter in person. "Brother Shu, you have to bring us along this time," said Chen Zuan suddenly. "We have only been to one overseas mission before. Bring us to see the world." Cheng Qiuqiao said, "Brother Shu, I want to go too." Both of them had advanced to rank 1 and nobody would do anything to them if they went overseas. Chen Zuan was thinking about the worship he would receive from girls overseas. It was as though he was out for a vacation. As a young man, although he had the ability to dominate the world, he did not have the opportunity to demonstrate it. That made him rather anxious. "Fine, eat your dinner. I will let Nie Ting know." Lu Shu put down his chopsticks and left. Currently, the species research team was a small group and the members' relationships were very good. It would be good if they could bring the two of them along as they could chat with them along the way. Lu Shu was not afraid that both of them would meet trouble overseas as after all, there was only one rank 1 in the entire Phoenix Society in North America. Chen Zuan, who was behind Lu Shu, was envious. Everyone in the Heavenly Network called Nie Ting Heavenly King Nie. Only Lu Shu called Nie Ting by his full name. After Lu Shu left, Lu Xiaoyu put down her chopsticks. "I prepared the food. You guys should wash the dishes." That night, Lu Xiaoyu cooked. Initially, Lu Shu wanted to cook but Lu Xiaoyu refused to let him. Chen Zuan looked at Cheng Qiuqiao, "You do it." Cheng Qiuqiao looked at Chen Zuan, "Why aren't you doing it?" Chen Zuan kept quiet for a while. "Let's negotiate and each make a compromise." "How?" Cheng Qiuqiao was speechless. "Little Fury shall go." Little Fury, who was eating, looked confused. At this moment, Lu Xiaoyu walked over and took Little Fury away and said in disdain, "Look at both of you. Finish washing the dishes in 5 minutes, if not, don't leave." Little Fury made funny faces on Lu Xiaoyu's shoulders. It was great to have a support. Lu Shu stood outside the door and stepped into a void. At this moment, something strange happened. It was the first time he followed Nie Ting and stepped into a void. However, instead of ending up in the yard where Nie Ting and the rest were at, he stepped into the night sky. Nevertheless, he was not unfamiliar with that place.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.